The afternoon sun blazed over the winding country road, turning the Kentucky asphalt into a silver ribbon of heat. Inside a sleek black Lexus, Robert Langford, a wealthy retiree in his late 70s, drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, a look of mild irritation crossing his face. The car's air conditioning whirred faintly, struggling against the suffocating summer air. Robert had lived a long life of luxury and control, decades spent running a powerful logistics empire that had made him one of the most respected men in his field. He was used to things bending in his favor, used to people who answered his calls before the second ring. Before we go any further, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if the story moves you, drop your thoughts in the comments and share it with a friend. Now, let's begin. But that day, luck seemed to have taken the afternoon off. A sharp pop followed by a low thump had brought his car to a reluctant stop on the side of a rural road, miles from the nearest town. He tried calling roadside assistance, but the signal on his phone was as dead as the tire that sagged against the dirt shoulder. Robert sighed, loosening his collar. The isolation felt heavier than the heat. He was contemplating whether to start walking when movement caught his eye, a figure in the distance, walking steadily down the road. As the shape grew closer, Robert realized it was a boy, maybe 13, 14 at most, with a determined stride and a backpack slung over one shoulder. His clothes were worn but clean, a faded blue t-shirt, frayed jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. When the boy reached him, he paused, surveying the situation with sharp, observant eyes. Then he gave Robert a polite nod. "Got yourself a flat, sir?" he asked, his tone respectful but sure. "Yes," Robert replied, a touch of relief in his voice. "And it seems I'm in the middle of nowhere with no signal." The boy smiled, a hint of confidence in the gesture. "That's all right, I can fix it for you. My uncle runs a repair shop down the road. He taught me how to change a tire last summer." Before Robert could even protest, the boy set his backpack down and crouched beside the tire, examining the damage like a young professional. "The spare's in the trunk," Robert said, gesturing toward the back of the car. The boy nodded, popped open the trunk, and got to work. His movements were swift and sure, his hands steady. Robert stood beside him, watching as the boy loosened the bolts with practiced ease. There was something impressive about the calm efficiency of his work, something that made Robert feel unexpectedly humbled. He wasn't used to watching others work without being the one in control. In just a few minutes, the job was done. The boy wiped his hands on his jeans, straightened up, and gave Robert a satisfied grin. "All set, sir," he said cheerfully. Robert reached into his wallet, pulling out a few crisp bills. "Here," he said, extending them toward the boy. "You've been a great help. I insist." The boy's smile faded slightly, and he shook his head. "Thank you, but no, sir. I don't need anything. I was just glad to help." Robert froze, hand still outstretched. It wasn't rejection he was used to, not from someone so young, especially not when money was offered. He slowly lowered his hand, watching as the boy slung his backpack over his shoulder and started walking back down the road. "Wait, what's your name?" Robert called after him. "Tyler," the boy said without turning around. "Have a good day, sir." Robert stood there for a long moment, the name echoing in his mind as the boy disappeared into the shimmer of the heat. Sliding back into his car, Robert started the engine, but he didn't drive off immediately. His eyes lingered in the rearview mirror, watching the small figure fade into the horizon. He didn't know why, but something about that brief encounter stirred something deep in his chest. A feeling he hadn't known in a long time. Gratitude. Humility. Maybe even hope. That night, the silence inside Robert Langford's mansion felt heavier than usual. The grand house, perched on a hill just outside Lexington, was a masterpiece of modern architecture, glass walls, polished marble floors, and a sweeping view of the city lights. Yet, despite its beauty, it felt hollow. Every tick of the antique clock on the wall echoed through the empty living room like a reminder that he was, once again, utterly alone. Robert sat in his leather recliner, a glass of bourbon in hand, but his mind wasn't on the drink. It was still on the boy, Tyler. He'd met thousands of people in his lifetime, executives, politicians, investors, people who shook hands with smiles that never reached their eyes. Everyone he knew wanted something. There was always a deal, a transaction, a favor owed or paid. But that kid had walked away from money as if it meant nothing. Robert leaned back, the dim light of the lamp casting long shadows across the room. He tried to focus on his meal, a perfectly cooked steak and a side of asparagus brought by his housekeeper earlier, but it sat untouched. The image of Tyler crouched by the tire, his steady hands and calm voice, kept replaying in his mind. There was something pure about that moment, something he hadn't seen in decades. For a man who'd built his entire life on numbers and profit margins, it was unsettling to feel this kind of emotion. Yet, underneath that unease, there was a strange warmth. Who was that boy? The question stuck with him through the night, and by morning, it had grown into a quiet determination. When the first light of dawn spilled through the glass windows, Robert was already dressed, his car keys in hand. He didn't know exactly where he was going, only that he had to find the boy again. He needed to thank him properly, or maybe understand why he couldn't stop thinking about that brief encounter. He retraced his route from the day before, driving past open fields and quiet farms. Each gas station and diner he stopped at brought the same puzzled looks when he described Tyler, a young boy, about 13 or 14, with dark skin, bright eyes, and a steady way about him. Most people shook their heads. Until an elderly man sitting by the counter of a small roadside cafe looked up from his coffee and said, "Sounds like you're talking about young Tyler Brooks. Lives over in Dawson Creek with his mama. Good kid, always lend in a hand when someone's in trouble." Dawson Creek, Robert repeated, committing it to memory. "Thank you." The drive to Dawson Creek took nearly an hour. The highway gave way to narrow country roads, and then to a small town nestled between the rolling hills. The homes were modest but neat, their porches shaded by tall trees and blooming azaleas. Robert slowed as he approached a weathered house at the edge of town, white paint peeling, a picket fence leaning slightly to one side. He parked the car and stepped out, smoothing the front of his shirt as nerves pricked at him. He wasn't used to showing up unannounced at anyone's door. He wasn't used to needing to. Taking a breath, he knocked gently. A moment later, the door opened to reveal a woman in her early 40s. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun, her face lined with the quiet strength of someone who'd carried more than her share of burdens. Her eyes, kind but cautious, studied him. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Good morning," Robert said, clearing his throat. "I'm sorry to bother you. My name's Robert Langford. I believe I met your son yesterday, Tyler. He helped me change a tire on Route 74. The woman's guarded look softened instantly, and a proud smile touched her lips. "That sounds like my Tyler," she said. "He's always finding someone to help. You must be the man he mentioned last night at dinner." Robert smiled faintly, relief washing over him. "Yes, that would be me. I just wanted to thank him properly. He refused to take anything from me yesterday." She chuckled lightly, shaking her head. "That sounds about right. Stubborn boy. You're welcome to come in if you'd like, he's out back mending the chicken coop." "Thank you, ma'am," Robert said, stepping inside. The house was small but spotless. The walls were adorned with framed family photos, birthdays, school portraits, and crayon drawings that must have come from Tyler's younger years. The furniture was mismatched, but everything was arranged with care. It was a far cry from the sleek emptiness of Robert's mansion, yet there was something about this place, a warmth that no luxury could buy. The woman led him through the kitchen and out the back door. There, under the shade of a large oak tree, was Tyler. He was hammering a loose board into place, his movements focused and sure, the same quiet determination Robert remembered from the day before. When Tyler looked up and saw him, surprise flickered across his face. "Mr. Langford," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What are you doing here?" Robert smiled. "I wanted to thank you again. You helped me out when I really needed it, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since." Tyler shrugged modestly. "It wasn't a big deal." Robert chuckled softly. "To you, maybe not. But to me, it was." For a moment, they just stood there, an old man and a young boy, in the shade of the oak tree. The stillness between them carried a quiet weight neither could quite explain. "You know," Robert said after a pause, "most people don't stop to help strangers anymore. Especially when there's nothing in it for them." Tyler tilted his head, genuinely puzzled. "Well, if you can help somebody, why wouldn't you?" Robert looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, the ease in his voice, and felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just admiration, it was respect. He smiled. "You've got a good heart, son. Your mother must be proud." Tyler grinned, glancing toward the house. "She works hard. I just try to help when I can." As Robert stood there, watching the boy with the kind of admiration he hadn't felt in years, a thought began to take root in his mind, a thought that would change both their lives. Tyler's mother, hearing voices in the yard, stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a towel. "Tyler," she called with a gentle smile, "come wash up, sweetheart. Lunch is almost ready." Her gaze shifted to Robert. "Mr. Langford, would you care to join us? It's nothing fancy, but you're welcome." For a moment, Robert hesitated. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been invited into someone's home for a simple meal. Most of his dining happened in exclusive clubs or high-end restaurants, where the servers knew his name before he even spoke. But there was something so warm, so sincere about the woman's offer that saying no felt impossible. "I'd be honored," he said, smiling. Inside, the kitchen was small but inviting. Sunlight streamed through a lace curtain, falling across a wooden table that had clearly seen years of family meals. The air carried the mouth-watering scent of baked bread and roasted vegetables. Tyler washed his hands and slid into his chair beside his mother, while Robert took a seat across from them, feeling oddly out of place in his tailored suit among their humble surroundings. As they began to eat, the conversation flowed easily. Tyler talked about his school, how he loved math and building things, how he spent weekends fixing bikes for neighborhood kids. His eyes lit up when he mentioned wanting to become an engineer someday. Robert listened intently, genuinely fascinated. "And you, Mrs. Brooks," he asked between bites of warm cornbread, "how long have you lived here?" "All my life," she replied with a soft laugh. "This old house belonged to my parents. It's seen better days, but it's home. I work at the diner in town, mornings mostly. Tyler takes care of things around here when I'm gone." Robert nodded, glancing around. The furniture was old, patched here and there, but the place was spotless. The photos on the wall told a quiet story, birthdays, holidays, moments frozen in time. It was the kind of life that wasn't measured in money, but in meaning. For the first time in years, Robert felt something he hadn't realized he'd lost: connection. The laughter, the casual talk, the warmth, it all filled a space in him that his wealth never could. When the meal ended, he set his napkin down gently and looked at Tyler's mother. "You've raised a remarkable young man," he said sincerely. He helped a complete stranger without hesitation or expectation. "That's rare these days." She smiled, pride flickering in her tired eyes. "Thank you. He's a good boy. Life hasn't always been easy, but we've learned to be grateful for what we have." Robert nodded slowly, his mind already spinning. He didn't want to intrude or insult them by offering money, He'd already seen how Tyler reacted to that. But he couldn't walk away without doing something. These two had reminded him of something he'd forgotten long ago, that kindness didn't need an audience, and generosity didn't always come from abundance. He stood to leave, shaking Tyler's hand firmly. "You've got a bright future ahead of you," he said. "And I hope you never lose that heart of yours." "Thank you, sir," Tyler replied, smiling shyly. As Robert drove away, the road stretched out before him, quiet, golden in the afternoon light. But inside, something had changed. He'd spent his life calculating profits and risks, always searching for the next big opportunity. Yet this, a single act of kindness from a boy with nothing to gain, had stirred more meaning in him than any deal he'd ever closed. By the time he reached the highway, he already knew what he wanted to do next. This wasn't just about gratitude anymore. It was about purpose, about giving back in a way that truly mattered. And Robert Langford, for the first time in decades, felt alive with an idea that would soon transform not just one family's life, but his own. The next morning, Robert Langford awoke before sunrise, a rare occurrence for a man who had long since retired from the world of early meetings and endless phone calls. But that day, he felt a spark of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Coffee in hand, he sat by his study window overlooking the rolling hills behind his estate. The sun had barely touched the horizon, painting the fields in a soft gold. He thought of Tyler, the boy's calm smile, the humility in his refusal of money, the quiet pride in his mother's eyes. Something about that family lingered with him, like a melody he couldn't stop humming. For most of his life, Robert had measured success in numbers, in profits, investments, and returns. But the boy had shown him something beyond that, a kind of wealth that couldn't be bought or sold. And now, he wanted to return the gesture. By mid-morning, he was on the phone, his calm voice carrying a new kind of urgency. "Tom, I need a crew," he said to his old friend, a contractor who'd handled some of his business projects in the past. "Small job, but important. I'll cover everything, just get your best people and meet me in Dawson Creek tomorrow morning." Tom chuckled. "What are we building this time, Robert? A vacation cabin?" Robert smiled faintly. "No. Something a little more meaningful." 2 days later, a caravan of trucks rumbled down the narrow road leading to the Brooks home. Tyler and his mother stepped out onto their porch, blinking in disbelief as men in hard hats began unloading lumber, paint, roofing materials, and new fixtures. Mrs. Brooks pressed a hand to her chest, stunned. "Mr. Langford, what is all this?" Robert stepped out of his car, clipboard in hand, dressed casually for the first time, no suit, no tie, just jeans and a pressed shirt. He smiled warmly. "You've done a wonderful job keeping this place together," he said, "but I thought it could use a little help. Consider it a thank you, from me to your family." Her eyes widened. "Oh, sir, you don't have to do that. We've managed fine on our own." Robert shook his head. "You've done more than manage. You've thrived with what you have. But this," he gestured toward the house, "this is the least I can do after the kindness your son showed me." Tyler stood quietly beside his mother, his expression uncertain. "You really don't have to, sir. I was just helping because it was the right thing." Robert crouched slightly so that his gaze met Tyler's. His voice softened. "And that's exactly why I want to do this. You helped me without expecting anything, and that reminded me of something I'd forgotten, what it means to care about people, not just outcomes." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Brooks blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Robert said with a smile. "Let me show my gratitude properly." Over the next several weeks, the little house at the edge of Dawson Creek came alive with the sound of hammers, saws, and laughter. The sagging porch was replaced with new wood and bright white railings. The roof was fixed, the walls repainted a cheerful cream color, and the creaky steps were rebuilt from sturdy oak. Inside, the floors gleamed with polished hardwood, and the kitchen, once small and outdated, now boasted new cabinets, fresh tiles, and modern appliances. Tyler's favorite part came when a team rolled in a brand new swing set for the backyard, painted deep blue. He couldn't stop grinning as he watched them assemble it. At first, he tried to help the workers, carrying planks, sweeping sawdust, even offering to fetch nails. But Robert would chuckle and wave him off. "Your job," he'd say, "is to enjoy being a kid for a little while." Still, Tyler couldn't help sneaking out to watch the crew. He was fascinated by how things came together, how beams supported walls, how tools worked, how a simple sketch could become something real. One of the workers, a big man named Joe, noticed his curiosity. "You've got an eye for this," Joe said one afternoon, handing Tyler a tape measure. "Here, help me mark this board." From then on, Tyler was at Joe's side every chance he got, asking questions and learning as he went. His excitement was infectious, and Robert found himself smiling every time he saw the boy in action. Watching him brought back memories of his own youth, of his father teaching him how to build a treehouse behind their old farmhouse, back when life was simple and full of wonder. It had been a long time since Robert had felt that kind of joy. And as the renovation neared completion, he realized that what began as a simple act of gratitude had become something far deeper, a chance to rediscover the good that still existed in the world. When the final day arrived, the Brooks home looked almost unrecognizable. The porch gleamed in the afternoon light, the garden had been replanted, and the fence, once broken and uneven, now stood strong and straight. Neighbors gathered around, bringing homemade pies, casseroles, and small gifts. Children ran through the yard, laughing as Tyler showed them the new swing set. Mrs. Brooks stood on the porch, hands clasped over her heart, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Mr. Langford," she said softly, "you didn't just fix a house. You gave us something much more, hope." Robert smiled, his throat tightening. "You and your son gave me something first," he replied quietly. "A reminder of what matters most, kindness, family, purpose. I think I'm the one who should be thanking you." As evening fell, the air was filled with the sound of laughter and music from a neighbor's radio. The porch lights glowed warmly, illuminating faces full of joy. Robert sat on the new steps, sipping iced tea while Tyler and his friends played in the yard. The boys' laughter echoed across the quiet street, pure and free. Mrs. Brooks joined him, a content smile on her face. "You've changed our lives," she said softly. Robert shook his head. "No," he murmured, "your son changed mine." She looked at him curiously, and he continued, "I spent so many years chasing things that didn't matter. But helping you, being here, it's the first time in decades I've felt real happiness." For a long moment, they sat in silence, watching the sun sink beyond the trees. The sky turned a deep orange, painting everything in gold. Then Tyler ran up the steps, breathless and smiling. "Mr. Langford," he said, "when I grow up, I want to do what you did. I want to help people too." Robert looked at him, emotion welling behind his eyes. "You already have, son," he said. "You helped me remember who I am." The three of them sat together as twilight settled in, sharing a quiet peace that didn't need words. And for Robert Langford, a man who had spent a lifetime collecting fortunes, this moment, was the richest he had ever felt. Months drifted into years. Seasons came and went like chapters in a story no one wanted to end. Dawson Creek changed in small but beautiful ways. The little house that once stood tired and gray was now a beacon of warmth on the hill, flowers blooming along its white fence, wind chimes singing in the breeze, and a sign above the porch that read, "Brooks Home, built with kindness." Inside, laughter filled the rooms. The scent of Sunday breakfasts, the hum of an old record player, the quiet peace of family. Robert Langford became more than a benefactor to the Brooks family. He became something like family himself. He visited often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with books, sometimes just to sit on the porch with a cup of tea while Tyler shared stories from school. He didn't need the grand boardrooms or conference calls anymore. His wealth, his mansion, even his title, none of it mattered. What mattered was the small moments. The sound of Tyler's laughter. The proud, tired smile of Mrs. Brooks when she came home from her shifts. It was those simple, honest things that gave Robert a reason to wake up each morning. One cool autumn afternoon, Tyler came running down the dirt road, waving a sheet of paper in his hand. "Mr. Langford. Mr. Langford," he shouted, excitement spilling from his voice. Robert, pruning the rose bushes by the porch, straightened up with a smile. "What's all this noise, son?" Tyler practically leapt up the steps, breathless and glowing. "I got in. I got into the engineering program." Robert froze for a second, then laughed, a deep, proud laugh that came straight from the heart. "You mean the State University?" Tyler nodded vigorously. "Full scholarship. They said my designs from the science fair impressed them. I get to study structural engineering." Robert's hands trembled slightly as he took the acceptance letter. His eyes scanned the page, and for a moment, he saw the little boy who once fixed an old man's truck on the side of a lonely road, now standing tall and full of dreams. He swallowed hard, blinking back the emotion. "You did this, Tyler. You earned it. I couldn't be prouder." Tyler grinned. "I wouldn't have made it without you, sir. You believed in me when no one else did." Robert shook his head slowly. "No, Tyler. You believed in yourself. I just happened to notice." That night, the three of them celebrated in the living room, music playing, candles flickering, and laughter echoing through the house. Mrs. Brooks made her son's favorite meal, baked chicken with cornbread and greens. Robert brought a cake from the best bakery in town, and the sight of Tyler's name written in gold frosting brought tears to everyone's eyes. As they ate, Robert leaned back in his chair, quietly observing them. The joy, the light, the love, it filled him with a peace he had searched for all his life. But deep down, he also knew time was beginning to move differently for him. His steps were slower now, his hair whiter, his voice softer. But every visit, every meal, every conversation with the Brooks family seemed to add something to him, not years, but meaning. He began transferring parts of his estate into charitable trusts, quietly ensuring that families like the Brookses would always have support. And when Mrs. Brooks asked him once, "Why are you doing all this?" he smiled gently and said, "Because one act of kindness can outlive us all." Years later, when Tyler graduated with honors, he walked across the stage in a deep navy gown, the crowd cheering as his name was called. Among the audience sat Mrs. Brooks, and beside her, in a wheelchair but smiling proudly, was Robert Langford. When Tyler received his diploma, he looked into the crowd, and their eyes met. For a long moment, everything fell silent. He saw not just a mentor, but the man who changed his life with compassion and faith. And in Robert's eyes, he saw something deeper, pride, love, and peace. After the ceremony, Tyler knelt beside him. "I made it, sir," he said softly. Robert smiled weakly, gripping his hand. "No, Tyler. We made it." A few months later, on a quiet spring morning, Robert Langford passed away peacefully in his sleep. His will contained no extravagant gestures, no lavish foundations bearing his name. Instead, there was one simple clause, one that brought the Brooks family to tears. He had left his estate, not the mansion, not the cars, but a trust fund worth millions, to the Langford Brooks Scholarship Foundation, dedicated to supporting underprivileged students in engineering and trades. And the very first recipient of that scholarship? Tyler Brooks. Years passed again. Tyler grew into a man, strong, kind, and brilliant. He became an engineer known not just for his designs, but for his heart. He built schools in rural towns, repaired broken homes, and funded scholarships in Robert's memory. One afternoon, standing before a newly built community center, Tyler addressed a group of students. His voice was calm but filled with emotion. "When I was your age," he said, "I fixed an old man's truck on the side of the road. I didn't know who he was, and I didn't do it for money or recognition. But that one act changed my life. He taught me that kindness is never wasted, that it comes back to you in ways you can't imagine." The students listened, silent and inspired. Behind him hung a bronze plaque that read, "In memory of Robert Langford, the man who gave back what truly matters." As the crowd dispersed, Tyler stood alone for a moment, looking up at the plaque. The late afternoon sun caught the metal just right, making it glow like gold. He smiled softly. "You kept your promise, sir," he whispered. "And I'll keep mine." Then he turned and walked away, down the same kind of dusty road where his story once began, carrying forward not just the legacy of a man, but the power of a simple truth. That one act of genuine kindness can change everything. If you believe stories like this should be told, hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below because your voice matters, too.